Alright guys, and welcome back to the channel, and today I will be giving you my full fight predictions and breakdown for UFC 300 live Saturday, April 13th from the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, and I absolutely cannot wait to get into this incredibly stacked card from top to bottom, and we're going to go right ahead and dive on into the very first prelim opener of the night, which is a battle between two former champions in Cody No Love Garbrandt versus Deiveson Figueiredo. And I'm going to go ahead and say right off the bat, this is a very, very tough fight for Cody Garbrandt. This is a huge step up in competition from his previous two fights where he was fighting lower level guys in the division, picking up a win against Brian Kelleher and Trevin Jones, barely okay to decent fighters, but nothing special at all. And Cody did get back on track in those fights. He didn't look great against Trevin Jones. He looked pretty decent against Brian Kelleher. His hands looked quick. He was sharp, he was fast. But the problem with Cody is that you just simply cannot trust him to stay out of a firefight, and his chin is still very damaged and very questionable from all the knockouts that he has suffered in his previous fights. And as everybody knows, your chin does not get better with age. It does not get better with age, especially in MMA when it's been cracked a ton, when it's been tested a ton, and Cody cannot seem to stay calm in most fights. Now, he looked pretty decent against these lower level guys, but going up against a former champion who is still just as dangerous and just as deadly in Deiveson Figueiredo with these sharp hands, the incredibly crisp striking, the absolute nasty power that he possesses, I see Cody Garbrandt getting absolutely tagged and cracked in this fight and knocked out. I think he is going to try to keep it on the feet with Deiveson. I think he's going to try to get in the pocket with Deiveson. He's going to be a little hesitant. He's going to try to beat him in the striking game, but I think Deiveson's striking and his power is just on the next level, and I don't see Cody Garbrandt getting fully back on track here. If he can get back on track and get this win, we might actually see the resurgence of Cody Garbrandt, him actually getting back towards possible top 5 contention, maybe secondary title dreams, but I just don't see it for Cody. I think he's going to get cracked here. I think he's going to get TKO'd badly, and I have Deiveson Figueiredo by second round TKO. Pretty much no question there. So we are going to go ahead and move on to the very next fight of the night, which is Bobby Green versus Jim A10 Miller. And what an absolutely incredible story and career resurgence for Jim Miller. He is 40 years old, an absolute UFC veteran with some incredible, awesome, just pulling the dog out of his soul wins in his last few fights, just knocking guys out dead, looking sharp, looking effective, looking crisp, looking tactical. And it's such a shame for Jim Miller because a good portion of his early career was stolen from Lyme disease. He battled Lyme disease for many, many years. He struggled with it. It affected his performances in the octagon. But now he is past that, and he is looking sharper and better than ever at 40 years old. And he is going up against one of the best defensive fighters in the lightweight division in King Bobby Green. And it's a very interesting matchup, and I would love to pick Jim Miller in this fight, but unfortunately, I do think the movement, the sharpness, and the defensive slickness of Bobby Green is going to cause Jim Miller problems. I think Jim Miller is going to stand in the pocket with Bobby, but I think Bobby Green is going to be too slick, too fast for Jim, and this fight is simply going to come down to a speed difference. I see him getting out of the way of most of Jim's shots and tagging him to a easy 30-27 decision on the scorecards. I hope I'm wrong. I hope Jim Miller can come out, land a crazy punch, and knock Bobby Green out like Jalen Turner did. I mean, it would be absolutely incredible if Jim could pull it off, but I think he is going to struggle with that speed and that defensive movement, and I see Bobby just tagging him to a pretty easy decision win. And we are going to move on up to Jessica Andrade versus Mariana Rodriguez. And this is a wonderful, wonderful matchup. A striker's delight, a pure brawler power striker versus a technical, sharp, methodical striker. And I do see Mariana Rodriguez winning this fight pretty easily. She is the sharper, more technical, more crisp striker. She's much more intelligent than Jessica Andrade when it comes to fight IQ. Jessica Andrade is at the level now where most elite female strikers of the division are going to figure out her game plan, and that is to just rush forward and swing wild looping power shots. And Jessica Andrade has paid for it many times in the past with elite strikers, rushing in blindly, swinging with her chin up and getting caught. And I don't see Mariana knocking Jessica Andrade out, but I do think her crisp, technical, sharp hands are going to be more than enough to get around the wild looping power shots of Jessica Andrade, and I see Mariana Rodriguez just picking her apart for 15 straight minutes for a clean, easy 30-27 unanimous decision win, and that's going to bump Mariana Rodriguez back up to where she needs to be coming off some losses, and unfortunately Jessica Andrade will take another loss, and yeah, that's it. Mariana Rodriguez by a clean technical decision. And moving on up, I'm incredibly excited for this fight. We are looking at Jalen the Tarantula Turner versus Renato Moicano, and this is an absolute easy fight for me. I think Jalen Turner is going to knock the dog shit out of Renato Moicano. And, nothing against Moicano, but the facts are that in every single fight that Moicano is in with an elite level striker, his defense is poor, his hands are down, and he gets cracked and hurt in every single fight. And it's always looking like a near Rocky emergency for him, and he either gets knocked out or he just winds up losing the decision. But Jalen Turner is an absolute problem. This kid is so talented. He's so big for the division. He's so long. He's got nasty, devastating power, incredible reach. He's got great distance management, and the kid is just an absolute Terminator in how he approaches striking. And I do not think Renato Moicano is going to be able to take the shots from Jalen Turner. I think he's going to be the more crisp, long-range striker. I think he is going to crack Moicano, hurt him bad, and knock him out early in this fight. And even if Moicano gets a hold of him and takes him down to try to submit him, I do not see Moicano holding Jalen and his massive frame down. I think Jalen gets right back up, tags him with beautiful crisp shots in the pocket, and knocks Moicano out. So we are going Jalen the Tarantula Turner by round 1 KO easily, no question. Moving on up, we are looking at Sodiq Yusuff versus the very hot and up-and-coming prospect of Diego Lopez, and this is a very tough, interesting fight. Sodiq Yusuff has looked great in his UFC run, picking up a lot of wins, did have the very close loss to Edson Barbosa, but I'm telling you now, Diego Lopez, this kid is a beast. This kid is special. He had that very close fight with Movsar Evelev. I mean, almost beat the guy, one of the toughest wrestlers, one of the toughest tests in the division, and came this close to beating him. And ever since that loss, he has just looked impressive. I mean, what he did to Pat Sabatini, his hands, his speed, his power, his jiu-jitsu, and I think this is a very close fight, but I think Diego Lopez can pull this off. I think he can tag Sodiq Yusuff with enough clean shots to possibly knock him out. And if he can't knock him out, then I think he will take Sodiq Yusuff for the full 15 minutes, just outstriking him, edging him in the shots. I think Sodiq will land shots on him, and it will be very competitive, very close, very back and forth in moments, but I am going to side with Diego Lopez to be the better, sharper striker, and for that grappling and jiu-jitsu, to get him some cage control, to get him the better shots at range, to get him the better shots in the pocket, and I think he will pull off this win against Sodiq Yusuff, and I am going to say that he knocks Sodiq Yusuff out in the second round. If he cannot knock Sodiq out, then a very clean, unanimous decision for him. I'm going to say Diego Lopez 30-27, but 29-28 at the least on the cards. Now we are moving on up to Holly, the Preacher's Daughter's Holmes versus the debuting Kayla Harrison. And this is a very interesting fight. A big debut for Kayla Harrison finally. But I am going to go ahead and say that Kayla Harrison will show the world that she's here to stay and that she will pick up the pretty easy win against Holly Holm. And I'm just going to be honest, I am not on the Holly Holm train. I never have been. I think Holly Holm is at the point where Most women in the division are going to easily pick up her predictable game plan, and she fights exactly the same in every single fight she's in. She stands at range with her hand out, and then hush, 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 and runs forward and throws the same 1-2-3 combination over and over and over. It's the same predictable thing from Holly Holm all the time in every fight, and she's getting older. She's starting to lose her step, and I think Kayla Harrison is going to be too much for her. I think Kayla is going to be more powerful. I think she's going to be the better grappler. I think she's going to be better in the striking, and I do see her getting Holly Holm down in this fight and submitting her. Now, if she cannot submit her in the fight, I do think she wins each round cleanly, and I think she takes the unanimous decision victory over Holly, but I just don't see Holly having anything to offer a debuting and pretty much streaking Kayla Harrison outside of the one loss that she had in PFL. So we are moving along to Calvin Kattar and Aljamain, the Funkmaster Sterling, and a very, very interesting fight for Calvin Kattar and Aljamain Sterling. Calvin has been on the shelf for about a year and a half now with that horrible knee injury that he had against Arnold Allen. But at the end of the day, he's one of the best boxers in the featherweight division. I mean, absolutely beautiful, crisp boxing, beautiful hands, beautiful combinations. But sadly, even though I would love to pick Calvin Kattar in this fight, and I'm not an Aljamain fan at all, I think the grappling and the wrestling from Aljamain Sterling is going to be a little too much for Calvin Kattar, who has been on the shelf for so long with this injury. I think his hands will look pretty decent in the early beginnings of the fight. He might get a few things going, but I do expect Aljamain Sterling to get in on Calvin, get to the legs, get to the hips, get him up against the cage, control him on the cage, and I do see Aljamain being a problem on the ground for him, and I am picking Aljamain Sterling by decision. I think it'll be a pretty clean 30-27 unanimous decision. Maybe there's a possibility Calvin steals an early round from him and makes it a 29-28, but I think Aljamain's wrestling and grappling will make the difference in a long layoff and returning Calvin Kattar. Moving on up, a very interesting in the light heavyweight division, Yuri Prochazka versus the returning Alexander Rakic, and another fighter who has been on the shelf for about 2 years with another horrible knee injury. He fought Jan Blachowicz when he blew out his knee, and in that fight, Alexander Rakic was losing that fight until he blew his knee out. And Yuri Prochazka did have the very close up until the finish fight with Alex Pereira. He was looking pretty decent, but you could tell that time off did affect Yuri Prochazka. Not terribly, but, he was a little behind in his movement, a little behind in his strikes, and I do think that affected him. And in this fight, I do see Yuri Prochazka getting back on track and being the faster, more dynamic fighter as the fight goes. I think Alexander Rakic is going to have a hard time finding his timing, landing those shots. I think Yuri's going to be slick. He's going to move. He's going to do a lot of that unorthodox movement that we all know and love him for. And I do see him picking Alexander Rakic apart and possibly knocking him out in the second round for a TKO. Now, I could be slightly wrong. Alexander Rakic could come in looking better than ever. He could look refreshed. He could look rejuvenated. His striking could be on point. It could be a very close fight, but I think Yuri's striking and an unorthodox style will be enough to get him the TKO. Moving along, we are looking at, let's see, Bo Nickal. This is flipped backwards on Tapology. But we are looking at Bo Nickal and Cody Brundage. And this is a easy pick for me. I am going Bo Nickal by submission all day. I mean, his grappling has looked absolutely impressive since he's been in the UFC. His striking is looking impressive. And Cody Brundage is just not good. The kid has underperformed in his last few fights. He's gassed. His grappling has not looked great. He's just looked very underwhelming, and I think this is a easy feeding to Bo Nickal. I think Bo Nickal is going to come out and just dominate him, ragdoll him, take him down, and submit him, and it's not going to be much of a fight at all. So we are going Bo Nickal by submission on Cody Brundage. And moving on up to Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan, and this is such a tough fight. This is probably the toughest fight on the card for me, because Charles Oliveira was supposed to get his rematch with Islam Makhachev, unfortunately got a devastating cut, couldn't make the fight, and now he is fighting for that number one contendership again. And this is such a tough fight because Arman Tsarukyan has looked like an absolute killer. The way that he destroyed Beneil Dariush. I mean, the wins that he's had, the streak that he's been on, and he is going up against, I mean, an absolute Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu master in Charles Oliveira, who has beautiful boxing, that Shuto boxing, beautiful power in his hands, high-level deadly Jiu-Jitsu in his back pocket. And even though this fight is so tough, and it's going to be a good fight, and I would love to pick Charles Oliveira here, I am going to slightly side with Arman Tsarukyan to keep the streak alive, to keep the nasty power and the hands going, and I think he is going to out-edge Charles Oliveira in this match by decision. I think it's going to be a very competitive fight. I think there's moments where Charles could tag Tsarukyan in the pocket, land a nasty shot, crack him, hurt him, maybe get his back. But I think Arman is going to be slick enough. I think he's going to be good enough with the boxing to get around Oliveira's shots. I think he could possibly hurt Oliveira bad, drop him. Oliveira gets hurt in almost every fight that he's in. He normally gets cracked and dropped. And I think Arman can just edge the striking in this fight. And I'm going to say that he picks up a pretty close 29-28 unanimous decision win on the scorecards. If not, then he catches Oliveira with a big shot in the middle of the fight, cracks him, hurts him, and TKOs him. But we are going Arman Tsarukyan by decision. Moving on up, we are at Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway, and this is such an incredible fight. Oh, and it's pulling at my heartstrings because I am such a Max Holloway fan. I absolutely love him. Easily pretty much the best pure boxer in the UFC, some of the best hands in UFC history, going up against the powerhouse Justin Gaethje, and it's such an incredibly close, tough fight. And my heart wants to pick Max Holloway in this for his volume, for his the pressure that he brings, the endless shots that he brings. But unfortunately in this fight, I think Justin Gaethje's power, his leg kicks, his combinations are going to possibly get this job done. I think Max is going to look sharp. I don't see Justin knocking Max out at all. Nobody knocks out Max Holloway. It's nearly impossible. I think Max is going to get cracked with some big shots while he's bringing that volume, and I expect Justin to land a lot of solid leg kicks. And the leg kicks were a big factor in Max's loss to Alexander Volkanovski, and Justin Gaethje has some of the best leg kicks in the game, plus some of the nastiest hands in the game when it comes to power. And I think those power shots, unfortunately, are going to get the best of Max, but I expect this to be a very close fight for the BMF title, and I'm going to say that Justin Gaethje takes it 49-46 on the scorecards, 4-1, or 48-47 at the least 3-2. But I am leaning 48-47 unanimous decision for Justin Gaethje over Max Holloway to become the new but pretty silly and hokey BMF champion. And moving right along, we are at Weili Zhang versus Yan Xiaonan. Yan Xiaonan has been looking absolutely wonderful in her last few fights. Great hands, great boxing, and Weili Zhang is just an absolute assassin. Beautiful striking, beautiful grappling, beautiful ground control. I mean, beautiful jiu-jitsu. She's so well-rounded. And even though I think this is going to be a very interesting and competitive fight, I am going Zhang Weili by decision to retain her belt. I think she is just going to be the sharper striker. She's going to land the better volume. She's going to be better in the grappling. She's going to be better in the wrestling. She's going to be better on the ground. I think she is going to out-edge Yan Xiaonan everywhere in this fight. But I do expect Yan Xiaonan to be competitive, to have moments, to look good. I don't think she's going to look as bad as Amanda Lemos should, because, good God, that was a terrible performance. I mean, Zhang Weili made her look like she didn't even belong in the UFC. But I do expect Yan to be competitive, but I think Zhang Weili is just the perfect total package in a female fighter, and I think she gets it done easy, 49-46 on the judges' scorecards, if not a easy 50-45, showing why she is the best strawweight fighter on the planet right now. And we are finally at the main event of the evening, and the fight that I have been anticipating talking about the most, Alex Pereira versus the returning Jamal Hill. And I am so excited for this fight for one reason, and that reason is I am picking Jamal Hill to knock Alex Pereira out pretty much cold. I think Jamal Hill is going to prove the entire world wrong. Like he said, he came out and said, everybody thinks that Alex is this otherworldly boxer, that I just can't hang with him on the feet. And I am going to show you all that I am better than that man, and I am going to knock him out and shove it up everybody's ass. And I think Jamahal Hill has all the tools to beat Alex Pereira. Now, Alex Pereira, on paper, is the better technical kickboxer. He's the more polished and cleaner striker. But here's the thing about Jamahal Hill. Jamahal Hill is an absolute dog. He has got that dog in him. He has got that pressure. He's got that pace. And he comes to fight. He gets in your face. He moves. He cuts wild angles. You know, and the pressure that he brings is just a different level that I think Alex is not going to be ready for as this fight goes on. And I mean, when you look at the way that Jamahal Hill broke Thiago Santos, a big, deadly, powerful Brazilian striker, and he got in his face and just relentlessly landed shots on him and broke him, dropped that man and TKO'd him. And you look at, you know, what he did in the Glover Teixeira fight and what he did to Johnny Walker, knocking him, I mean, with a shot straight on the forehead, knocking him out cold against the cage like that. Jamahal has crazy, crazy power. And I think he hits just as hard as Alex, but he's got the better chin, he's got the better movement, and he's just got that dog in him. And Alex's biggest flaws defensively are that he does not move his head. He comes forward in that wide stance with his hands down, very flat-footed, very upright, and he does not move his head. And because of that, he has been tagged in multiple fights. He got tagged in the Yuri Prochazka fight bad quite a few times, and Izzy knocked him out with the same punch twice. The overhand right. He threw the exact same punch twice up against the cage. Alex didn't adjust to it. He didn't move his head. He ate the shot twice, and Izzy knocked him out cold. And if Jamahal Hill lands a power shot like that on Alex Pereira, he will absolutely rock him, hurt him, and TKO him. And I do not see Alex Pereira knocking Jamahal out. I don't see him hurting Jamahal. It's never happened. He's just one of those guys that has an incredible chin, an incredible dog and will just surrounding everything that he does. And I don't see Alex doing any massive damage to Jamahal. The only thing I could see is him landing some early leg kicks, trying to go for that Achilles heel. But as long as Jamal's Achilles holds up and he can check those leg kicks and he does not allow those to slow his movement down, I see Jamahal Hill getting around the power shots of Alex Pereira, putting that pressure on him, putting that pit bull on him, and landing big shots on Alex, hurting Alex, and knocking him out to reclaim his light heavyweight title. And I am picking Jamahal guaranteed for the upset to become, and again, and still, the light heavyweight champion of the world. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for watching this video. Thank you for, checking out these predictions. And I cannot wait for UFC 300 on the 13th of April. And we will be back in the future with more predictions. Thank you so much and take care.